Welcome back to True Crime. In today's episode, we delve into the horrifying case of Israel Keys, a serial killer whose cold, calculated approach to murder has left a lasting mark on criminal history. Unlike many notorious killers, Keys didn't fit the typical profile. He was methodical, organized, and traveled extensively to carry out his crimes, leaving little evidence behind. His ability to evade detection for years makes him one of the most terrifying killers of the 21st century. Born in Richmond, Utah in 1978, Israel Keys grew up in a large, strict, and religious household. His family lived in a rural, off-the-grid community, which led to a relatively isolated upbringing. From an early age, Keys displayed a lack of empathy, cruelty toward animals, and other troubling signs that hinted at the darkness lurking within him. He became more reclusive during his teenage years, eventually rejecting his family's religious beliefs and developing a fascination with violence and control. Key's criminal career began with burglaries, arson, and other petty crimes. But as he grew older, his desires escalated. In 1998, he joined the U.S. Army, where he served for several years. While there, he was described by fellow soldiers as quiet, disciplined, and well-behaved, an image that helped him maintain a low profile. However, it was during this time that Keys began to fantasize about murder, formulating a plan that would allow him to kill without getting caught. One of the most disturbing aspects of Israel, Keys was his meticulous approach to murder. Unlike many serial killers, Keys didn't have a specific victim profile. He targeted men, women, and children of various ages and backgrounds. What made him especially dangerous was his extensive planning. Keys would travel across the United States, often thousands of miles from his home in Anchorage, Alaska, to commit his crimes. He would scout locations ahead of time, often bearing murder kits in remote areas years before he planned to use them. These kits, which included weapons, restraints, and tools to dispose of bodies, were hidden in places like Vermont, New York, and Washington State, allowing him to strike whenever and wherever he chose. Keys's crimes were driven by a desire for complete control and power over his victims. He didn't kill impulsively. Instead, he selected his targets carefully, often choosing people at random while traveling. After selecting a victim, Keys would stalk them, break into their homes, or abduct them in broad daylight. He would then take them to a remote location where he could carry out his heinous acts without fear of being interrupted. His crimes often involved torture, sexual assault, and ultimately, murder. What made Israel Keys especially terrifying was his ability to blend in. Outwardly, he appeared to be a normal, functioning member of society. He was a father, a business owner, and even built a reputation as a reliable handyman in his Anchorage community. This dual life enabled him to evade suspicion for many years, as his travel habits and methodical approach left investigators baffled. Keys's known murder spree began in the early 2000s, though it's likely he had been killing for years before that. One of his most infamous crimes was the abduction and murder of 18-year-old Samantha Koenig in Anchorage, Alaska, in February 2012. Keys kidnapped Koenig from her workplace, a local coffee stand, then kept her alive for hours before eventually killing her. After her death, Keys used her ATM card and sent ransom demands to her family, even staging a photo to make it appear as though she was still alive. He then dismembered her body and disposed of it in a frozen lake. The investigation into Samantha Koenig's disappearance was intense, but Keys's slip-up came when he used her ATM card in several different states while traveling. Law enforcement traced his movements and eventually captured him in Texas in March 2012. What followed was a chilling series of interviews where Keys revealed not only his involvement in Koenig's murder, but also his role in a series of other unsolved killings. Keys confessed to the murders of Bill and Lorraine Currier, a married couple from Essex, Vermont, whom he abducted from their home in 2011. He described how he had broken into their home, restrained them, and then took them to an abandoned farmhouse, where he killed them. Despite his confessions, Keys refused to provide many details about the location of the bodies, which were never found. He was also extremely guarded about the full extent of his crimes, admitting that he had killed at least 11 people across the country, but hinting that there were many more victims. Keys took pride in the fact that he had studied other serial killers, learning from their mistakes to ensure he wouldn't get caught. He operated without a clear victim profile, choosing targets based on opportunity rather than personal connection. This randomness made it difficult for authorities to link his crimes together, allowing him to remain undetected for years. During his interrogation, Keyes showed little remorse, discussing his crimes with chilling detachment. He was unwilling to provide closure to the families of his victims, offering only vague hints and refusing to reveal the locations of several bodies. His motive wasn't rooted in a particular hatred or vendetta. Rather, he simply enjoyed the thrill of killing and the control it gave him. He treated his murders like a twisted form of craftsmanship, taking pleasure in the process of planning and execution. Keyes' arrest and subsequent confessions shocked the nation, but he would never face a full trial. On December 2, 2012, Israel Keyes took his own life in his jail cell, cutting short the investigation into his crimes. He left behind a series of cryptic notes, but no further details about his other victims. His death meant that the full extent of his killing spree might never be known, leaving law enforcement and the public with more questions than answers. To this day, Israel Keyes is remembered as one of the most elusive and methodical killers in modern history. His ability to operate under the radar for so long, traveling across the country and committing murders without leaving a trace, sets him apart from other serial killers. The true number of his victims remains unknown, and the families of those he took will likely never receive full closure. The case of Israel Keyes serves as a chilling reminder of how dangerous a person can be when they operate with such careful planning, and how easily someone can hide their darkest secrets behind the mask of normalcy.